Natural disasters are a commonplace that we have to deal with every day living on planet Earth. They come in many different forms, such as hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. They cause a lot of problems, with people's lives, death tolls, loss of property, things like that. The first natural disaster we'll be talking about today is the Galveston hurricane of 1900. The problem with the Galveston hurricane of 1900, they did not have any advanced warnings for hurricanes like we do nowadays. They didn't know 2 weeks ahead of time that they were going to have a hurricane. Galveston, it's a really small island off the coast of Texas, and most of the people on the island lost their lives. Hurricanes affect people annually each year. What's particular about this one, though, is that almost the entire island was devastated. Between 6,000 to 8,000 people lost their lives. Now in 1900, that's a lot of people living on a really small island. It was a good percentage of the island. For the entire island, it was estimated 10,000 to 12,000 people lost their lives. The Galveston itself is only a few feet above sea level, and the water levels from the storm surge from the hurricane reached 15.7 feet high. So it flooded almost the entire island. 2,636 homes and 300 feet of shoreline were completely damaged. They actually lost beaches because there was so much water. The cost and damages back then were around $30 million. Today's standards, that's roughly $827 million in damages. And this is a really small island. Think of your neighborhood and everyone in your neighborhood being wiped out completely. Everyone in your neighborhood dying, all the houses being completely destroyed. This is, as you can see, the destruction here. Houses toppled over on their sides. There's a person standing down here, and you can just see all the devastation that was caused by this hurricane. These people had no idea it was coming. It happened in the middle of the night. They felt the winds picking up, and as they tried to retreat, they would pile in houses with each other, and the house would be completely demolished, and every single person would die. Us living in Florida, hurricanes affect us every year. We've had several, horrible hurricanes such as Katrina or Andrew. And the thing with hurricanes is if you know it's coming, be prepared to leave if you have to leave. Don't stay. Katrina, a lot of people stayed and a lot of people lost their lives. Andrew, a lot of people stayed and a lot of people lost their lives. This is another picture of a house. The wind was so strong with that hurricane that it actually took the house off of its foundation and flipped it on its side. The rest of the house maintained intact on the inside and everything. The house was just flipped on its side. That's how strong the winds were. And the next topic that we'll be talking about is the Joplin tornado of 2011.
In the late afternoon of May 22nd, 2011, an enhanced Fujian, which is an E5 or EF5 multi-vortex tornado, struck Joplin, Missouri, reaching a maximum width of over 1 mile and winds peaking at 250 miles per hour. The tornado destroyed virtually everything in a 6-mile path, which is this right here. So that's 6 miles, and this is 1 mile width. The devastating tornado in Joplin, Missouri killed about 158 people and injured 1,150. It's one of America's deadliest twisters since 1953. The Joplin tornado was the second EF5 tornado to strike Missouri since 1950. It is the 7th deadliest tornado in the United States and the 27th deadliest in the world. Federal officials declared a public emergency for Missouri, allowing the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to waive certain requirements of federal and state health insurance, allowing programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and health insurance programs, meaning that they're allowed to take more patients in, and they don't have any penalties if they stay longer. One of the hospitals is Joplin City State Hospital, and that's the aerial view of it, and this is how it is back then. Now we're going to watch a video of a before and after, just to show you how devastating this tornado was. As you can see, it's really different. That was about a year ago, and this is the day after everything was gone. Alright, so in case you do encounter a tornado, they'll just pop up like that. But they usually do pop up in southern states between May and the end of July. In northern states, it's June and the end of August. How to spot one is a large, dark, low-lying cloud, typically rotating, and it's counterclockwise for the most part. A large roar like a freight train, just like coming at you. When tornadoes happen, they do strike quickly, like I said, and with little to no warning. So if you see one, run, get in the tub. Like if you're at a house, get in the tub, because the pipes go into the ground, and that will help you stay to the ground and not get all the shock and stuff. Tornadoes can occupy tropical storms and hurricanes as they move into land. So there's a tropical storm or a hurricane, there might be a tornado around the corner from it. And tornadoes most likely occur between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m., but they can occur at any time. So the next presentation that's coming up is going to be about the San Andreas Fault.
Okay, so along with other natural disasters, earthquakes are cause a lot of destruction and are very damaging. In 1906, one of the largest earthquakes to hit was the San Francisco earthquake. It was on the Richter scale of 8.0 magnitude. That's close to the highest it can possibly be, because the highest on the Richter scale is 9. And I'll explain that in a second. In this picture, can you go to this picture? Okay, so 1 is when you can't feel it at all. 2 is the smallest people can normally feel. It's just like a little shake. 3, people near the epicenter feel the quake. 4, this will cause damage, a little bit of damage. 5, damage will be done is weak to buildings in the area of the epicenter of the earthquake. And then 6, it can cause great damage. And 7, it creates enough energy to heat New York City for 1 year and can be detected all over the world. It also causes serious damage, so this is very damaging. And then 8 was the one that hit San Francisco. This unfortunately causes deaths and major destruction. So that basically destroyed San Francisco in 1906, like completely. I even went to San Francisco, and I don't know if you guys have been there before, but there's huge cracks that are still in the streets and things from that damage. It was devastating. So number 9, though, is extremely rare, but it really causes unbelievable damage. So you think about how it just knocked out San Francisco, 9 would just be insane. Absolutely insane. Not even able to really comprehend.
These giant gashes in the Earth are reminders of our planet's awesome power. They are fault lines, fractures in the Earth's crust where huge slabs of rock slowly grind past each other. Most faults we can't see, but here in California, the San Andreas Fault is visible at the surface.
You can't have an earthquake without a fault. And I'm standing right now on what's perhaps the most famous fault in the world, the San Andreas Fault, that extends from Mexico down south, way up to Oregon in the north. This is one of the few places in the world where you can stand with 1 foot on one tectonic plate and one on another. In other words, this ground here is attached to New York.
So if I can kind of explain this in better terms, the San Andreas Fault, it lies off the coast of California. And when you have an earthquake, you get, in the subduction zone, you have 2 plates that kind of buckle underneath each other and then they break. And then to this point, it's kind of like a spring effect, and then the earth opens up. So if you can kind of imagine 2 people standing across from each other, and if you were to move right and the other person were to move right as well, that's what's happening to the earth. So that's what they're kind of explaining here.
York and Iceland, the ground here is attached to Hawaii and Japan.
The San Andreas Fault sits on the boundary between the North American and Pacific plates. It's called a strike slip fault, a place where 2 plates collide and try to slip past each other. As these plates move or creep in different directions, sometimes they get stuck. The longer they stay stuck, the more tension builds and the bigger the eventual quake.
So the San Andreas Fault is roughly 10 miles deep and reaches from the Salton Sea in Imperial County to Cape Mendocino in Humboldt County. So that's in California. It's also 700 miles long, and it's also between the North American and Pacific plates. So yeah, it's definitely caused a lot of destruction in San Francisco for sure. And they actually say that there's an earthquake that will hit in the near future that will actually split California off the coast. So that is going to be interesting. So all states and continents have faults, but California has more. And what makes the San Andreas Fault so important is that it's a plate boundary and that it is on land, and most plate boundaries are in the ocean, so they're hard to study. So we can really study that one, but then there's many more under the ocean that we're not aware of, so that's kind of scary. And as well as twisters and tornadoes and things like that, they're very unpredictable, so they can strike up at any time. I used to live in California, and we lived in a really high-story building, and there were wheels underneath the building, and one day I just felt the whole building rolling. So they're really scary and very unexpected. So if you ever were to be caught in one, you want to get between a door frame or get away from buildings and get, far away from things that can topple over. But next we're going to talk about Krakatoa volcanoes.
Hello everyone. We're going to be talking about volcano Krakatoa that happened in 1883. This volcano was one of the most deadliest volcanoes that erupted. It happened in Indonesia. It happened right in between Java and Sumatra, this tiny little island. It was the loudest sound recorded. It was heard from about 2,000 miles away, which is actually in Australia. So being in Indonesia and Australia, 2 really far places, and you can hear that volcano erupting. This is a map showing how bad the volcano erupted. Okay, right here, this whole outline was the island before it erupted, and it took out everything right here, and it left with this and this. These are the damages. This volcano made a huge impact on the world. It released 20 million tons of sulfur in the atmosphere, and excuse me, and the clouds were seen 6 miles high, and they produced a winter a volcanic winter, which means they reduced the temperatures worldwide, which is pretty crazy for one volcano. The volcano killed at least 36,417 people, and it wiped out about 615 villages that were coastal because of the waves that came after, and the people died mostly because of the thermal injuries. This volcano is actually still erupting, but it's at an all-time low. It's barely anything. Sometimes it gets as big, newsworthy big, but it never gets as big as the one in 1883. Volcanoes erupt in a cycle, which is very common for them. It involves hundreds, thousands of years of small eruptions to build up for one other huge big one, but it never gets, as I said, as big as the one in 1883. Now we will be talking about tsunamis.
In March 2011, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake hit 80 miles off the coast of Japan, a little town called Sendai. It is a population of about just over 1 million people. But that wasn't, the earthquake in and of itself was not the only problem. What we have here is essentially a trifecta of hell between the earthquake and its damage, the tsunami that was generated, that it took out much of the coastline of the east coast of Japan, including Hawaii and reaching as far as California. Then we have the Fukushima nuclear disaster, which, by the way, was a level 7 disaster comparable to Chernobyl. Ring of Fire is a line, or a border, if you will, of fault line that goes all the way off the coast from New Zealand, as you can see, all the way up near Japan, the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, all the way down the coast of South America. In its length, it's 25,000 miles long. If you were to fly in an airplane from the North Pole to the South Pole and back to the North Pole and add about 80 miles, that's about how long it is. Pretty impressive. It also contains a line of the most active volcanoes on the planet. So a lot of energy, a lot of pressure, lots can go wrong. What's fascinating about this earthquake at 9.0, which is one of the top 5 earthquakes ever on Earth that scientists can prove in recorded history. Amazing. But not only was it the biggest earthquake, it tilted the Earth off its axis by 23.5 degrees. Can you imagine that amount of energy to take the Earth floating in space and tilt it, which actually shortened our day by fractions of a second. Pretty amazing. Incidentally, as a result of the earthquake, 7 people in Tokyo died. It happened about 280 miles from Tokyo, the epicenter of the earthquake, and killed 7 people in Tokyo. So Tokyo's built a pretty strong city. They're prone to earthquakes. It's right along the Ring of Fire. Their building codes and their structures are built to withstand this. But at 9.0, we're talking top 5 earthquakes on the planet, ever. 7 people, that's it. Pretty impressive. Liquefaction is essentially when the tectonic plates compress together, and it's common during earthquakes, primarily. Literally squeezes the moisture out of the earth, or sweating. The earth is sweating. And it will uplift water deep below the earth's crust, anywhere where there's water. And it'll literally, again, bring it up to the surface. Amazing. Very similar, if it were to happen in a sandy area, it would be what we are familiar with as quicksand. Pretty scary. Now, again, this is Tokyo CCTV picture of what it looked like before. Unfortunately, the video is not working. But in any case, what happens when the tsunami is generated? What you have here is tectonic plates where the bottom is the heaviest in this situation, slips below the lightest, creating a massive force of energy up and expends it out across the surface in every direction. Kind of like dropping a drop of water on top of the water, but in reverse. If you can imagine that in your head. Initially creates a wave 30 feet high, traveling at over 500 miles per hour. Eventually, as the tsunami spreads out, it will decrease its energy. It just, like a car. I'm sorry, not like a car, but motion, forward motion. Now, let's see what. This is a time that it took, as soon as the tsunami happened, the earthquake happened, that the tsunami was initially started. It took only 11 hours to reach the western seaboard of the United States of America, going at planes of airplane speed. It's unreal. I mean, we're talking truly a disaster of biblical proportions. Okay. Now, not only did the tsunami destroy everything in its path, it went up to 6 miles inland. The earthquake, which contributed to that, is that the power of the earthquake was so strong that in some parts of Japan it actually lowered the shoreline 4 feet below sea level, just cracking it off. Pretty impressive. So, again, like I mentioned, it did hit. It hit Hawaii, and there's a member of my team that actually lives in Hawaii and would actually experience the tsunami. It reached Santa Barbara, California, which was really the most damage received in the United States. It was a wave about 4 feet tall, but we're talking a massive amount of energy, just unbelievable, just really hard to comprehend totally. Pretty impressive. This is a wave, and anybody surfs in here, I'm sure, is looking at this like, wow, it's perfect. But this is what happens when, look at this massive amount of foam behind the wave. It's just unprecedented. It's just never, it's just absolutely stunning. It's a beautiful photo under unfortunate circumstances, taken from a helicopter. Now we're going to go talk about a little bit about Fukushima. Actually, the wave initially was 30 feet high. Obviously, they got bigger. The wave that hit the Fukushima nuclear power plant is estimated to have been 45 feet tall. At one point, its highest height, was 136 feet. Unbelievable. So, not only did the tsunami just destroy everything in its path when it did hit the nuclear power plant, as you can see the before and after. This is obviously before, this is after. You can tell by the dirty water and the smoke, obviously, from the nuclear steam coming off the power plant. But temperatures in the core of a nuclear reactor reach about 285 degrees Celsius. That's about 9,300 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's safety features in a nuclear power plant where the rods are taken out. So it goes into an automatic shutdown mode, so there's no power being generated. However, the heat still exists. Okay? So the wave hits, 45-foot wave hits the Fukushima plant, and then it takes out every cooling pump in its path. Okay? Now we got a backup. There's a backup cooling system. It's powered by battery. It lasts only 8 hours. I'm sure the engineers will rethink that after this disaster. Again, it was I don't know if anyone remembers, they were real hesitant to increase the alert level of the disaster. Eventually reaching, again, level 7, which is the highest level, and in their books, it indicates a major accident. Yeah, it's a pretty major accident when a nuclear reactor literally blows up. Nuclear fallout reaches the United States. Here's some other pictures of some of the damage at the plant. But eventually the nuclear fallout, I'm sorry, here we go with this is one of the reactors that absolutely is completely gone. This one, structurally, there's some integrity there, but for the most part, it's gone. And that's nuclear reactor number 4 that had a complete meltdown. Here we go with a map off of NOAA, which is the National Oceanic Atmospheric Agency. It shows some, obviously here's where we're at with Fukushima. The darker colors, the reds, the blues, the black is the most intense. But nonetheless, it doesn't take very long, about 3 days to hit the Aleutian Islands of the United States. All the way down. Look, anybody who lives up out of west of Washington, Vancouver area, got some pretty intense radiation. But it didn't just affect the, people, it also affected the environment. We're seeing reports now of people with higher cancer rates. We're seeing animals completely deformed, marine animals, mammals, and even, again, the people that live in Japan are, again, experiencing higher rate of cancer. But amazingly, not one death from radiation exposure. Pretty unbelievable, especially considering the fact that these people, when this hit, that were fighting it, didn't have any power, complete darkness. I mean, so imagine having blinders on, going in to pour water, and they did whatever they could. From boats to fire trucks, they just arbitrarily point the water just over the building, hoping it would get to the core to help reduce the temperature. Well, it obviously in reactor number 4 didn't work. Now, how could a tsunami affect Florida? Okay, well it can, and many people don't know this, but La Palma Island out in the Canary Islands is an island with a fault line inside of it. There's some controversy as far as how big it is, how deep it goes. It was once believed to be 25 kilometers long. Now they think it's 4. It was believed to go down 2 kilometers. They can't prove it, but let's go over the worst case scenario. Literally, it's structured that the island will fall into the ocean. Half of the island will fall into the ocean, creating a wave estimated at 200 to 300 feet high. A tsunami. Look what's in its path. Brazil, Venezuela, Bolivia, the United States. By the time that energy is dispensed, like we're talking about 200 to 300 feet, estimates are at about 150 feet once it hits the eastern seaboard. Florida at its highest point is 347 foot above sea level. It's a little town called Britton Hill in the Panhandle, so that's our only hope. Anybody know how to get there? You gotta prepare. You gotta prepare. Right? And what kind of warning are we talking about? Again, it took 11 hours for it to cross the entire Pacific Ocean. This is about the same distance. 11 hours. The whole state's going to be trying to go north. Think you're going to get there in time? Probably not, unless you're fortunate to own an airplane or helicopter. That's your best bet. But mega destruction. And incidentally, if it does hit the state of Florida, salt water will destroy every living green thing in its path. Trees, shrubs, plants, every single blade of grass, gone. There goes our agriculture industry and our tourist industry. Not to mention the water table. Salt water getting into the fresh water, say goodbye to the Everglades. I mean, it's crazy stuff. We're dealing with forces that are just almost inexplicable. Scientists do their best, but these are forces of God here, clearly. In closing, natural disasters, they just happen, okay? They don't discriminate, they don't pick and choose, they just happen. The question is everybody in this room prepared? And I mean prepared. Do you have canned goods? Are they in a plastic bucket? Why? They should be. Put them in a cardboard box, what's going to happen? It's going to get destroyed. Along with clothes, batteries, flashlights, radios, all these essential items that you need. And here's some good websites that I found that are phenomenal. This particular website, tsunami.noaa.gov, it'll issue tsunami alerts if you are interested. And earthquakes happen all over the world, and tsunami warnings are more common than we think. Just every time it's underwater, if it's over a magnitude of 6.0 and lasts more than 20 seconds, you're at risk for a tsunami. That's not a whole lot of time. So, in summation, preparedness is key. One other scary fact that is worth mentioning here is that scientists, because the sea levels are rising, there are some scientists, not all, that believe that at the present rate that the sea is rising, by 2050, the sea level is 19 inches. Well, okay. Melbourne, Florida is about 13, 14 feet above sea level. That's pretty significant danger. And lastly, I want to commend one of our classmates that we all know, who was stationed aboard the USS Ronald Reagan after the Fukushima incident. They were sent there to help out the locals and assist in any way they could: food, shelter, clothing, medical. Danielle, stand up if you could. No? Okay, but I think it's worth mentioning that Danielle is a true patriot. She did her job, and I think it's worthy of it. So thank you for letting me mention that. And again, preparedness is key, everybody. It's no joke. Don't wait till hurricane season. Don't wait. Have it ready to go. Have a plan. Thank you.